here in southern West Virginia in Raleigh County, county seat Beckley, but several miles outside of Beckley in the Trap Hill Glen Daniel area is the Coalmarsh Missionary Baptist Church. This is the first church in Raleigh County here, and has an interesting history. It was started in the early 1800s, and really the story, it was a church plant out of the Guyandotte Baptist Church, which is in the next county over, Wyoming County. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But their first pastor here at the Coalmarsh Baptist Church was Matthew Ellison, and he was ordained in 1837. Now, at that time, Matthew Ellison was busy. He would have been, let's see here, 33 years old at that time. There was sort of a lack of preachers to meet the needs of the very rural communities here in southern West Virginia at that time. And so at one time in his life, he was in charge of 9 different congregations, and he covered those churches on horseback, and his wife riding along with him on the same horse through that days. A lot of traveling preachers, churches would do that until they were large enough to support their own pastor. But Matthew Ellison was in those early days, and he's the first pastor here. And by the way, those churches that he covered, when he covered up to 9 of them, were up to 60 miles apart. And again, we think about traveling through these hills in the early 1800s and what type of a person and determination he certainly must have had. So Matthew Ellison here, it was the first pastor, and while he was here, several years into his pastorate, about 10 or so years, he understood, and there was a recognition for a need for a church to be established in what was called Raleigh Courthouse. It's now called Beckley, West Virginia, and so he initiated another church plant. This church plant initiated another church plant, and they met, of course, in the courthouse and homes for a while until they were able to build a building. Soon enough, that church in Beckley, Raleigh Courthouse, actually asked Matthew Ellison if he would be their pastor, and so he turned Coalmarsh here over to someone, and then went and was the pastor there at the First Baptist Church in Beckley for about 29 years. Now, during the Civil War, that church in Beckley suffered much. There was issues that arose from the war, and so it took an immense amount of effort and determination and persistence to keep the congregation together. Of course, during that time, West Virginia seceded from the Virginia in 1863 and became their own state, and he led, of course, his congregation through that time as well. And so he actually gave the land for the first church structure to be built there in Beckley. So quite a man, Matthew Ellison, and his wife faithfully by his side. He had 3 sons, all that served in the Civil War. He passed away at the age of 84 in 1889. Now, back up one generation. Matthew Ellison was the son of a preacher. His father, James Ellison III, was also a traveling preacher, and in southern West Virginia, as well as a farmer. He pastored the very first Baptist church in Wyoming County, a Guyandotte Baptist Church, which was the founding church for Coalmarsh. So Pastor James Ellison, his church planted Coalmarsh, and his son Matthew became the pastor here at that. A very interesting history, I believe, from the area. Now, southern West Virginia, Beckley area has got quite a history with regard to churches and Christianity, and really has quite an imprint of Bible believers through this area. But we go all the way back to the first 2 churches pastored by father and son in these adjacent counties. Here in Raleigh County, Matthew Ellison, first pastor of the Coalmarsh Baptist Church, which then planted the First Baptist Church in Beckley.